76 minutes.
I wanted a Mogwai. When I was a little kid, I really wanted a Mogwai, like Gizmo here. And you can probably see why, because it's cute and it's an animal, and I think it would make a great pet. And actually, even the what you might call the Super Saiyan form of the Mogwai, the Gremlin, would also make a decent pet. I mean, I'd have one of those. You know, I'd trade a week's salary to get a Gremlin or a Mogwai. And I think that the people who are attending this convention might understand the approach that I'm taking to robotics, because maybe you want a Mogwai also, or maybe you would trade a week of your salary, a week of your income, on average, for a pet Pokemon. I mean, if one of these was actually real, like say genetically engineered or somehow created, you would take one of these as a pet. Maybe if that's not your thing, the Boglin might be more preferred for you. I'm a child of the 80s, and so the Boglin was, that's about the ideal pet, I think. You know, sort of a monster from the swamp. Makes a lovely pet. An astromech droid. I think I would also, you know, trade a tidy sum if I could have an astromech droid. Not that I have a spaceship to take care of, but I think that, you know, the general usage is sort of like getting a Caterpillar construction tool for your property. Even if you got, you know, 10 foot by 10 foot backyard, it's worth having, just to dig giant holes. Cybernetic implants, would anyone be interested in those? I think I would. Maybe that made my eyes look weird, it'd be a little less enticing, but I think this sort of technology is something that people might also be interested in, or just having new neighbors move in. You know, maybe just the Japanese would go for this style of creature living amongst them, but I think there's a lot of general appeal with cuteness, fluffiness, and that sort of thing. And I'm here to say what I think is the news in the field of robotics, which is that the robot revolution is not going to happen, because it already did happen. It just didn't happen here yet. It's happening right now in people's basements and garages and laboratories, workshops, businesses, you know, pouring billions of dollars into robot development. The military is a huge part of that, of course, but also the part of robots that I work in is also expanding, and you'll see that throughout this presentation of where I see it going and why it's going there, I think. So a bit of background on me. I did a traditional engineering path, electrical engineering, computer science in school, and worked on robotics engineering sort of as a specialty area, which is a broad field. You know, you learn mechanical stuff, electrical, electronic, software, and so on. And that's what I was doing, pretty standard robot development work for Research Development Engineering Command for the Army. And about a year after taking this job with the Army, I was actually obligated through scholarship to take this job, but shortly after joining it, I realized that the type of robot that I wanted to do was not the type of robot that was being built by the military. And, you know, it's not something that the military would have an interest in building, really. Which is why I started my own company. So I took what I knew about robot development and started creating robots that were more for people. Robots that are meant to come and interface directly with people, so that the purpose of the robot was not to perform some sort of work in the environment, but rather to create an environment for a person while it's working, or while it's serving the person, or providing companionship, or whatever. In this case, I started off with haunted house animatronics and toy animatronics, you know, ways to bring creatures to life on a budget, because haunted houses, independent film, places like this that use animatronics are always on a budget. And after creating some of these effects, using the robot stuff that I developed, I submitted to Weta Workshop to go work on The Hobbit, because I heard they were looking for people, and it was fortunate that, one, I applied at the right time because they were on the verge of doing a very big animatronics project within The Hobbit, and two, it just worked out with the timing for my own personal life, so I could go and spend a few months in New Zealand and then come back home to the United States essentially and continue my business where I left it off. And it all worked out well, fortunately. I got there and was able to work on The Hobbit. I can't say what I did on The Hobbit, but as you can see here, I didn't make that thing because it's computer graphics. And as we all know, almost every effect that's done in these big budget effects, big budget films, are done with computer graphics. And the remainder is where you see the animatronic shine. It's not much time, really, when you look at the number of frames that an animatronic shot gets compared to computer graphic shots, but it's still, it's remarkable that in this day and age of filmmaking, we can still have a very large, I won't say the dollar level, but a very large animatronics project, which was under The Hobbit. And it was creature effects, it's the kind of animatronics that you imagine when you think of the word animatronics, such as Star Wars and so on. Another film I worked on was Man of Steel. I actually worked on 2 other films. One of them, can anyone guess from the shirt? It's Elysium. That's the other film that I worked on, but those 2 films were sort of on the side projects, which I thought was an interesting challenge, while doing this mammoth effort to get these creature effects done for The Hobbit. We'd also have people stop by and say, oh, by the way, I need this done, which kind of involves some of the tools that you guys might have in the animatronics department. In this case, I was introduced to the power file, and I hate this tool. It was not the tool we should have been using, which is an interesting thing to see or to consider in retrospect, because the crafts people and the level of competency with building things, technician type skills, was so high, and yet we were doing something that was just very difficult, like hitting your head against the wall. And once we got through it, it was great, and the effects turned out well, but that's actually my only memory of Superman, is driving through inches of material with power file rather than, it's grinding when you should be cutting. If any of you have built stuff, you know what I'm talking about. For Elysium, these android guards, it's Richard Taylor, the owner of a workshop in the center, and then Lons Hansen on the right, who's the head of the 3D department, which is like the model making. In the original Lord of the Rings, they built all these giant miniatures called bigatures in Lord of the Rings, and they pretty much dropped that out entirely from Hobbit, but they're still doing a lot of effects that use related skills, basically model making. And because it's an Android, it also has some electronics, some spinning fans, some LED displays, and so on. That's where animatronics came in. So I got to coordinate with this group and assist the art, where the animatronics and engineering side of it was a tiny fraction. Lons did maybe 99% of this model, and I came in and squeaked in a few lights and fans and things. But really, it was cool to be part of a project where it all didn't come down to me. One where it highly depended on a few people was this Icarus One. And this is, unlike Hobbit, a case where we had to rein in every expense and make design decisions we didn't want to make because of money. But we still ended up with an effect for under $1,000 and about 4 days of work to build this spaceship. This is on, actually I've got the link to the next page. Sorry?
Is that a door, or is that like a tote bin top?
It was, yes. We got that from Walmart. Cut out the, let's go back. You know, I just remembered, let's save questions till the end if possible, because I actually do have a question and answer period. You get first pick of tools because you asked a question, but the rest of the questions till the end. So yeah, we cut a hole in that and made that like the front, the viewport. And Mile Deep Films is where you can go see this video online. It's like a 4-minute video. But the production values, I was highly impressed with what a small group of people with dedication and some time and energy could create just on a very small budget. This is a Kansas City film company. Lately, I just picked up a new client, which I'm really excited about. It's Hasbro. The division within Hasbro is a toy company, and they made the Furby and the For Real Friends line. This is called the Advanced Robot Innovation, something like that, division within Hasbro. And I've been looking for an opportunity to take what I know about special effects and take what I know about robot design for working robots and apply that to toys, because this is under $100 for a robot that would have been science fiction 20 years ago. Actually, I said that I wanted a gizmo when I was a little kid, and most of the time when you hear stories like that, they don't amount to anything. You know, you want a lightsaber, and it turns out that they don't actually make sense with physics because a laser will continue going. Especially when that powerful, it's not going to stop at 4 feet or whatever. Flying cars, not really economical sense, not really that safe. Hoverboards, same idea. But Gizmo, that's a sensor. It detected when I wanted to communicate with it, and then it responded with motors, with sound. This is a robot. It's a robot Gizmo, and it's the closest thing I have to a living Gizmo, you know, childhood dream. And it costs under $20. You can get them from NECA, check Amazon. So I think Hasbro and companies that are producing affordable animatronic style toys are probably one of our best hopes for getting these kinds of character robot interactions that I think would be really cool, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. Okay, actually that bit's important. So when I think of robots, I tend to categorize them into 6 different groups, and that, I think, gives a good perspective on what we need to be thinking about as we design robots. Like, does this robot need to look good, or does it just need to do its job? And also, where we should be investing when it comes to what do we want to develop, what robots are most important and are going to have the greatest impact on people's lives. One of these that's had a huge impact on all of our lives is work slaves, the work slave robot. This is the ones that build cars, you know, these arms. There's not really an emotional connection there. They're not for people, they're building things for people. And there are robots that look humanoid. This is a personal robot. It's actually PR2 is personal robot 2. It's by Willow Garage. And this platform, this robot body, is kind of the flag bearer for a robot operating system, which is this earth-changing software platform when it comes to robots. It's opened up the floodgates essentially to innovation. They've made a great system for controlling a robot and made it completely free. ROS.org if you want to find out about ROS. But that's what's running this, and this is a work slave, but ROS could run anything. I like ROS. That's the last I'll say about it. Entertainers. So robots in films. Yoda, Harry of the Hendersons. These sorts of things would be entertainment robots. And in this case, what they do functionally in the world around them, whether if they're moving objects or traveling, you know, that's not really the point. The point is, what do they look like when they move? What do their faces look like? Companions. I'm going to take a drink for this one. Okay, so it's might seem odd that Kermit the Frog, a puppet, is there for the example of a companion robot. The reason it's there is because I think this sort of interaction is actually much more it captures the feeling that I think people should be having with robots better than what I've seen in videos of people interacting with robots. And there's a pretty simple explanation for that, and the reason is that there's Jim Henson actually controlling that hand. So what you have here is 2 great entertainers communicating and interacting for us to enjoy. So companion robots, because their purpose is to make this be a social agent for people, so that you interact with them sort of the same way. If your pet walks into the room, you'd probably say hello. If you like your pet, you'd probably say hello to it. That's because your pet is a social entity within your social stratosphere. And it's the same thing with companion robots. Their purpose is to be a living presence, living in a sense, with humans, and that's what's happening here. I wanted to point out that these are entertainers, again, because it's a challenge a lot of times for robot developers, especially very hardline scientists looking at just straight evidence and what do we build that fits the evidence best and that sort of thing. It's tough for them to swallow that making robots kind of entertaining and fun for people actually does have an impact impact and how much people enjoy interacting with it. Not all robot developers are like that. I'm just saying that is an issue currently in robot development. Okay, another category is guards or police robot. Put another Elysium slide up there because these androids are of this type. And then one step up or down from there, as you might call it, is the hunter-killers. Why are we calling them the same thing they call them in Terminator? I don't get that. This is the actual word. They're called hunter-killers. Or killbots, as Futurama has given us. So, sex slaves, of course. Sex slaves is going to be a big industry, I think. Yeah, okay, so there are cheers. There haven't been any cheers for this presentation until the sex slaves came on. So, we can imagine this market's going to be pretty good. These are real dolls, which are currently not robotic. Maybe I think they're looking that way already, and this is probably going to be the company that brings us there first. So of these 6, if we remember them all, that's my main focus, is the companion robot. That's basically what I'm all about. I'd also like robots to be able to perform something useful for people so that not only are they entertaining, but they are making the lives actually measurably easier for the people that they're interacting with. I mean, what could be a greater goal than that? I haven't actually made any sex slaves. That's something to be proud of. No, I think it could be. What's bizarre about this is that sex slaves, this category of robots, might actually be one of the greatest benefits to humanity that robots can provide, because it kind of, once they get good enough, prostitution isn't that marketable anymore. And maybe a company could figure out something like Real Dolls will donate 20% to people most at risk of prostitution for every sale, that kind of thing. Because really, once something comes along that's better than what's available, people just go to that. It doesn't matter what technology is driving it. No STDs, right. Unless you want, and that could be included.
They have an app for that.
So these ones are basically where I've worked. Down to there, I got out of the army before I made robots that killed anyone. That isn't proud of. Okay. Pull out my notes for this one. Okay, I asked all those questions at the beginning about having a pet Pokemon and having an R2-D2 because there actually is this question of ethics when it comes to robots. And of course, Asimov helped popularize the idea enough so that people will generally acknowledge that there might be something there. But at some point, I think it's going to be clear to everyone. Let me explain. As robots become more commonplace, they're incredibly useful for us functionally. And so they're going to become more commonplace as prices go down. And we're going to be constantly relating to them on a social level, sort of like the pet I mentioned earlier. So most of the time, or a lot of the time, it's going to be with these working robots or work slaves. We give a command and the robot carries out the command, end of interaction. And if it's a killbot, you send it to its target, it destroys it, and you're all happy with your robot. But if you have, say, another work slave, like a nanny bot, Rosie, she took care of you when you were an infant. She actually helped deliver you. She heard your first words, helped you with your first steps. She was there comforting you when you were scared of your first real horror movie. And her expansive solid state memory can recall almost every moment of your life. And then when you become, let's say 17, you sort of turn into a teenage terror, and you strap some plastic explosives to your nanny robot and just end her existence. And that probably has an emotional effect, even though we're talking about a robot without, any life or any humanity whatsoever. The fact is that today, I think it's premature to have this conversation about robot ethics because we can generally look at them and say they're not alive. People who want robots to have rights and everything like that are talking about robots that don't exist yet, which is fine. I mean, futurism and planning for what's to come is okay, but currently I think we'd be making a mistake because looking at technology, I don't have to explain what the computer revolution has meant for the world, but as we look at robot technology and it increases in its complexity and quality as time goes on, I think that there probably will come a point where we all in unison look at these robots and say, okay, that's alive now. And at that point, I think it would be unfortunate if we look back and said, oh, we already made a law saying we could kill them. That's probably the political situation we don't want to be in. So for now, I'd say, politicians, if you don't understand something, don't make a law about it. Well, I would say that, but there probably wouldn't be any laws then.
Anarchy.
Let's get the robots first to protect us.
Artificial intelligence before you even have artificial.
Okay, so I wanted to leave plenty of time. I wasn't sure if I had just an hour or we can actually go a little bit over. I could talk about a number of things that you've seen. My experience has been kind of varied. And I want to talk about what interests you most. I have a workshop and I build things and I'm an engineer and that's my thing, so I'm happy to talk about that. There's also plenty of other things I'm happy to talk about, but before I do, I want to talk about what will happen with the questions. If you ask a question, you can take your pick of this toolbox, anything you want in here, and I'll be giving away all this stuff while I'm here. This is excess from my workshop. I had 7 hammers, so now I'm down to 4. These 3 go to anyone. This project board is worth $130. This angle grinder, if you take it, take all the discs that go with it, it's like 60 bucks. I've used it once. So feel free. I'd like it if you told me what you want to do with it, so I know it's at least just not going to eBay. And I'll have those at my table and be handing them out while that one's here. If you do stop by my table, or I'm sure I'll be talking to most of you during this thing, and going back to participatory design, which I discussed earlier, that's part of why I'm here. I want to hear what you all want your robot to be like. If you could have an ideal robot, or an ideal creature, say any sort of technology. You could genetically synthesize any creature from fantasy or from your imagination. What would it be like? I'm curious about that. And regarding the robot revolution, it's I think the next big step in the development of human technology. It's like when we look at the questions of ethics and the questions of implementation, like how do we build these robots, it reminds me of so many other things, the computers that filled rooms and were never expected to be inside people's houses. Or the days when, before our planes traveled beyond the speed of light, it was called the sound barrier because many aeronautical engineers theorized that going at those speeds would shake the aircraft so much with all the wind and turbulence that it would just splinter apart in the air. But we passed it, now we're Mach 3 or something, faster probably. Robots I expect to go the same way. Look at how much we're putting into them and look at how far along they've come. If you haven't, it's been on YouTube. So really the message that I want everyone, if there's anything to take away from this, is that this revolution is coming and we are in the position, unique position in history, to determine what these robots are like and what our lives are like as we interact with them. So I encourage you to grab me sometime during this convention. And first, if you'd like to go with the tools, are you interested?
Actually, I have another question for you.
I think she's got the second question.
Okay, cool.
You're the third. That's the end of my presentation, formal.